Thank you very much. One of the privilege to be the last speaker is that many things have already been said, so I can go more straight to a few points that remains perhaps to be said, perhaps. I will try to convey you 5 ideas in the short time, and then we can discuss over during the question and answers. The first idea is that disinformation is certainly a very serious threat. And if we are talking about this threat with such an intensity and concern today, it is because this happens in a media environment which has profoundly changed. The digital transformation of the media sector has really hit hard the traditional players. You know, the changes in consumer habits are very visible. Today, 69% of the Europeans read news online and 62% use social media for that purpose. 75% of social media users declare to come across disinformation or fake news on a weekly basis, and only 26% of the Europeans consider social media as fully trustworthy information channel. So the news that you read, I mean the channel that you use in a predominant way to access news is also the channel that you trust the least, which is a strange thing. And overall, the danger, the perceived danger of disinformation for democracy at large, it is something that 83% of the citizens consider as an actual threat, an actual point to be addressed. There are many things that one could say on this point regarding the weakening of the media sector, in particular the difficult challenges that outlets have today in order to keep their business models sustainable, particularly in view of the shift of advertising resources towards the platforms and less towards the traditional media outlets. That is the first thing. The second point is about the phenomenon as such. This is, we are talking about disinformation, which is a real multifaceted phenomenon. Much has been said about the potential that orchestrated campaigns have in order to meddle with electoral processes, to interfere with elections, to alter perhaps even the outcome of the elections. But the more that research goes into the depth and the different aspects of this phenomenon, the more you discover that this information is also the result of domestically grown groups and conspiracy communities that pollute the space with the purpose of distorting or artificially shaping the public opinion on a number of important issues, be it the health issues, or being economic issues, being climate, and other points which are determinant in view of the future political choice that the people will be called upon making when going to the election. So this information is something that it is sowed throughout the public discourse and has the impact, has the danger, or present the threat to shape public opinion even before manipulations during electoral processes can take place. Having said all that, it is also very important to understand that this information is not so much about the content. You can lie at the end of the day. That is not what should shock us the most. Lies have always existed, even in political discourses. What is shocking today is that there are vulnerabilities in the media ecosystem. There are a number of vulnerabilities that enable conducts which are not immediately perceptible to users and can induce users into errors, into evaluation errors. One type of vulnerability has already been mentioned, is the clickbait potential of disinformation and the ability to distort advertising revenues and flows of money into websites which are imposter websites, which are ad farms, which in fact reduce resources available for serious outlets. And other forms of manipulation, media manipulation and vulnerability, it is the use of data, personal data for the purpose of micro-targeting in a context which is totally opaque. If you don't have transparency, no one can understand whether or not you receive that message, because that message, it is really credible and significant, or whether instead there has been a specific choice made by actors that use the platforms in order to reach audiences that are the most prone or the most vulnerable to certain messages. The third types of vulnerability is about what is called astroturfing in general. No? You amplify in a number of artificial ways your message in order to make your audiences believe that that has a strong popular support. You can use bots, you can use fake accounts, you can use groups of cyber mercenaries or cyber troops in order to create an artificial amplification around certain narratives. And since we are kind of herd animals, so we tend to believe that is true what the other people believe, the result is that if a story has a lot of followers, a lot of likes, immediately has acquired a certain credential for credibility, although it is totally fake, because behind there is a clear media manipulation. The fourth type of issues that we have with modern media, modern digital media, it is the question about the functioning of ranking algorithms. They're biased, and necessarily they're always biased. When you construe an algorithm, you have to choose a number amongst a huge amount of signals, and according to the weighting that you give to the different signals, you obtain a result or another result, right? And the MIT has recently published a study that shows that there is maybe even a tendency. The study was about YouTube, by the way, so Marisa can be kind of relaxed now. But it was about YouTube. There was a tendency to, on the YouTube algorithms, to self-radicalize. So basically, not only propose the users the content that are most, or the closest to the individual interest of each individual user, but has the tendency also to present more and more extreme content around that type of interest. The reason is the most extreme content, it is deemed to keep the users the longer on the platforms, and therefore more likelihood for these users to click on the advertisements that it is distributed on the service. The fifth and last type of vulnerability is what I would call the diffusion dynamics. So it is the very complex interplay between what happens on the digital space and what happens offline in traditional media, and how the breaking news syndrome of traditional media sometimes goes as far as to pick up user-generated content quite critically and to give the final blow to the trumpet of amplification, and contributes, so in a not always deliberate manner, to the amplification phenomenon. So they need also to take into account that whatever response we give to this information phenomenon cannot be but an inclusive response that brings together all the actors that operates in the information space. The other idea I would like to put forward to you, it is about the code of practice and its actual relevance. The 5 types of vulnerabilities that I've just mentioned are simply dovetailing the content of the code of practice. There are 5 pillars. The first is about the scrutiny of ads, and that is try to reduce the clickbait potential for fake news, and therefore to demonetize purveyors of disinformation. The second pillar is about creating transparency around political advertising and issue-based advertising, so as to create a normal level of awareness throughout audiences regarding the content that has been targeted specifically to these groups, and to label this content as sponsored, and to give an idea about the targeting criteria that have been used in order to reach that particular user groups. The third pillar is about integrity, ensuring the integrity of services, and should actually provide an answer, to these various forms of artificial amplification and astroturfing technique that I've just mentioned. The fourth one, it is about empowering consumers. Well, empowering consumers means to expose consumers to diverse content, to a pluralistic vision of the news, of the information, and therefore to rebalance the way that the algorithms works, be it on newsfeed, be it on search, or be it on the timeline of Twitter, in a manner that if a topic becomes trendy, becomes viral, well, it would be very important, first of all, that this topic, it is first of all accessed through authoritative sources, so the authoritative sources are given prominence in the display, in the ranking, and secondly, they are linked up with similar articles presenting different point of view around that particular story. What a related article does in the Facebook newsfeed, it is that. The problem eventually it is to scale up these systems to make it available to everybody. And finally, and last but not least, is the issue about how to empower the research community. Because you see, we are navigating on a difficult waters. There is Scylla and Charybdis, there is a hard rock, there is a rock and a hard place. The rock is, to give too much power to the public authorities that control the space and therefore acts as a ministry of truth. The hard place, it is to allow the platforms to become either the biggest intelligence service in the world or the private censors of the world. And that cannot be neither or. We need to navigate in the middle. And to be ready to occupy, to bring the ship across these straits, we need to also empower the society to create antibodies in the societies, and the main and foremost action that to be taken in this moment is to give independent researchers, independent fact-checkers the real means and tools to carry out their own work, which is independent oversight. An independent oversight. It is true that the platforms, compared to 1 year ago, have been collaborating much more with the research world, with the fact checkers. I just recalled the 20 organizations that operate in Europe today with Facebook. But it is also true that what we would like to see is that it is not only Facebook or Google that choose these actors from the civil society, from the independent academic and journalistic world, but it is the civil society itself that gets organized and creates the tools, gives itself the tools for carrying out an independent oversight of the space. For that, we need data. For that, we need an access to the data that it is privacy compliant, but also efficient in terms of mapping trends and patterns of diffusion of disinformation, and map these trends even at the local level, because the audiences in one European country can be affected by one type of narrative, and other audiences in a different country can be affected by different narratives. At the same time, there may be connection between actors and vectors that links up these strategies around the same goal, which is to destabilize democracy in those countries by creating distrust, by sowing distrust across future voters, and to create therefore the sense of distance between citizens and institutions. So that is where actually we are. So the code of practice is good. It has to be combined with other actions. We are launching right now in European Digital Media Observatories as a way to collect and network together researchers and fact-checkers, and hopefully that will be the first step of an initiative that could create a real antibody within the civil society in Europe. But the pathway ahead is quite long and needs to be pursued with tenacity and with the full support of all the political actors, including the Parliament. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.